Climate change. The phrase comes with a lot of negative connotation. In the newspapers, on TV, and in social media, doomsday discussion about the term climate change often makes the topic scary to talk or even think about. When people think climate change, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, known as the IPCC, comes to mind. There's a lot of talk in the media about the IPCC's recent report called Global Warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius. The report estimates we only have 12 years to prevent significant damage from global warming. Warming of even 2 degrees could have large impacts on the global environment. But what does climate change and global warming even mean? If you take a look outside your window, you may see the sun still shining as usual or typical cloud coverage for where you live. Could the IPCC be exaggerating? Are they saying the world will end in 12 years? If so, it doesn't really look like it. The answer is no, the IPCC report is not saying the world will end in 12 years. The sun will still shine and rain will still fall. The issue is that global weather will be more intense, and we'll have a hard time getting back to normal conditions anytime soon. Stronger storms, bigger waves, hotter summers, and longer droughts, among other phenomena, will affect communities around the world, notably the poor and those living on the coast. So, how will this happen? Will we be able to see the changes from climate change? We say yes. In fact, we can see those changes happening now. Let's take a look at the ocean. Sea level changes, relative rises and falls, are a good example of changes that occur because of global warming. The average global sea level, or global mean sea level, GMSL, has risen 3 inches since 1993, and 9 inches total since 1900. This sea level rise is greater than any observed in the past 2,800 years, and scientists agree human activity is the reason for this significant change. The GMSL is affected by many factors, but it is most closely linked to global temperatures. There's a long-term historical relationship between temperature and GMSL rate of change. Warmer temperatures over time correspond to higher sea levels. Studies show that throughout the 20th century, the GMSL was almost 60% higher than it would have been without the effects of global warming, and studies predict without change, sea levels will continue to rise throughout the 21st century. So how exactly does global warming cause sea level rise? It does so in 2 main ways. 1, the volume of water in the ocean increases as temperatures rise. Warmer water molecules have more energy and move in a way that causes the entire ocean to expand. And 2, global warming has increased the rate of glacial melt, releasing more water into the ocean. In summary, sea levels are rising because ocean water itself is expanding, and more water is being added by melting glaciers. You may be questioning what the significance is here. History shows lots of natural variability in glaciers. What makes glacial melt nowadays so different? The caveat here is that global warming today is magnitudes larger than it has been in the past, and this is because of the human-caused greenhouse gas effect. Human carbon emissions from industry activity, energy generation, and transportation have created a layer in the atmosphere that acts as a blanket trapping heat on Earth. This trapped heat warms the oceans, causing the thermal expansion we talked about, and melts glaciers faster than ever before, adding unprecedented mass to the ocean at one time. At this point, you have a good foundation in the theory of what is causing sea level rise and how the phenomena is indicative of global warming as a whole. That being said, theory alone is not enough to prove a point. If you are asking how we know all this is really going on, you are following the right train of thought. Sea level rise can be measured with instruments, but can also be seen in the magnitude and frequency of floods in coastal areas. For example, tidal floods, which are lower level flood events, also known as nuisance floods, have become more frequent along U.S. coastal cities, increasing in number per year by 5 to 10-fold between 1960 and 2010. With flood heights between 1 and 2 feet, these may not be the most devastating events, but can still cause flooding of infrastructure and trigger flood advisories where they strike. Looking to the future, a median 8-fold frequency increase in the number of 100-year flood events, those of larger magnitude with a 1% chance of striking every year, is projected to take place by 2050. This is in parallel with the average sea level rise mentioned earlier, as well as the melting of glacial and polar ice. All events are strongly correlated to human-made change in greenhouse gas concentrations and subsequent global warming. That being said, if the correlation is so strong, what causes all the controversy we hear about? Although there is little doubt in the observed increase of global mean temperature, confusion can arise due to regional variances, which make the record more convoluted. For example, increased temperatures during the summer can be coupled with more severe winters, which can make it seem like there are just more extremes rather than an identifiable trend. There's a popular analogy of weather versus climate, where the weather is highly variable and climate is the less variable average of all the weather. Well, this idea gets a wrench thrown in it when winters are long and consistently cold. It becomes tempting to wonder how global average temperature could be on the rise if 1, 2, or even 3 winters have been consecutively bitter. The truth is, for really reliable climate information, the average of the entire year for the entire planet, including potentially warmer summers, must be taken into account, and for more than just a few years. When this is done, a global warmth trend emerges. To return to sea level as reflective of general global warming, there are similar discrepancies in the state of the ocean which must be addressed for clarity. Although globally on average, sea level is higher than it has been in the recent past, there are still places where more and less change has been exhibited. Satellite analysis can confirm the overall mean rise, but the variances still leave what's really going on an open question. The answer is not singular, but some of the main causes of sea level variance can be addressed. Interactions between the atmosphere and the ocean, such as the relationship between wind and ocean circulation, can cause differing distributions in water and subsequent changes in regional sea level. Also, the global distribution of heat coupled with ocean density is a big contributor to sea level. A more dense mass of water will take up less space, and therefore will increase sea level less than a less dense volume of the same mass. Heat and salinity are large factors in ocean density, because heat can impact the amount of salt taken up by the ocean, and a more saline body of water is denser. When all these are taken into account, however, sea level can still be confirmed as on the rise due to human action. The effects outlined above may seem dire due to their capacity for damaging coastal cities, harming economies, and most importantly threatening people living near oceans. But this is not the end of the line. There are many ways you can help prevent the future from developing as past decades. It all comes down to reducing greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Most are familiar with the ways they, as individuals, can reduce their carbon footprint, such as carpooling, biking, riding public transportation, eating less meat, etc. Besides this, however, you should realize your potential as an actor in local government and write to officials of your concern regarding elevated sea levels. The vast majority of greenhouse gases come from manufacturing and industry, which must be curtailed through such legislation as carbon taxation. On a more personal level, it is likely either you or a relative lives close to the ocean, and rising ocean levels could manifest as immediate hazards very close to home. Besides your local government, talk to those in your community. It can be a tough conversation to have, but convincing a neighbor to use sustainable practices doubles the amount of difference you could have made on your own. And if you live close to the sea, it is for their own good. Never be afraid to speak up.